A good writer must also be a good reader. So, fellow writers, what are you reading these days, and what lessons can you learn from it to apply to your own writing? Hey, it's Sam with another Friday video for you. Happy Friday to everyone out there. Happy middle of May. Hard to believe that we're in the middle of May already, but here it is, the 17th, I believe, the exact midpoint of the month. So, no bit major updates to give on my own writing yet. I'm still hoping to pick up with that again in a month or two. I just been chipping away at it slowly within in the midst of other projects, but hoping after a month or two to start doing some querying again, and then we'll see where things happen from there. Today, I want to tell you about the book I read most recently. This is the fiction book I read most recently, written by a friend of mine who I've had on this product on this podcast video series before. The author is Cathy McCrumb, and I just read her newest book called Guardian. Okay, this is Guardian, Children of the Consortium, Book 3 by Cathy McCrumb. So it is the end of a trilogy, and I was excited to read this final installment of, first of all, a friend I know, um, having gotten her published series out there, and then to read the conclusion was great. So if you haven't heard me talk about it before, let me tell you about this series and this book in particular. Okay, so this is hard sci-fi, taking place in space. Much of it takes place on a space station in a futuristic society called the Consortium. Publishers Weekly actually reviewed this series. I think the first book is called Recorder, and they called it hard sci-fi with heart. So I mean, yeah, there is hard sci-fi, but it also really deals with the relationships of the characters and that whole thing. So and just to have someone like that review it was a cool like I guess credential for this book. So the main character we're following is the Recorder. That's the title of book one, or she was formerly a recorder. A recorder in this world is kind of like a human computer person. I've compared them to the human computers in Dune, or to like the Vulcans, Spock, for being overly logical and stuff. The recorders are raised from birth to just kind of record and observe information. They're not treated as a person, and they have a robotic drone attached to them at all times that kind of helps them process information and record things. So they're heavily monitored and heavily attached to this machine. So they're kind of considered to be part machine almost, and yeah, and it's written in first person narration, which I think is really cool. Just to hear someone who, like I said, I compare the voice to Spock, someone who at first is overly logical and just is used to talking like a robot in some ways, to hear her first person thoughts and feelings. So it's the Recorder. But in the beginning, I mean, this isn't a major spoiler because it happens near the beginning of book one. Her drone is damaged on a mission when they're in space, and so the question is, well, if I'm not a drone, I can't be a recorder anymore, and if I can't be a recorder anymore, then who am I? So throughout the series since then, we've seen her starting to get to learn learn how to be human, and learn how to care for her friends, and even have friends, and she falls in love, and all this stuff, have these human relationships and such that she wasn't really able to have or process much before. So I think it's been really cool character development, and again, the author nails her voice. Like it's an interesting character concept. Someone who is meant to be, or who is used to being detached and emotionless, who gradually becomes more attached and emotional, and just learns how to do that. It's just, I think it's a really cool character concept, and just the character's voice is one of the strongest draws for me, I would say. So yeah, but this book, let me see. They've been kind of in space for a while. Like their ship is damaged, or again, at least some of the people sustained damages. Their quarter did, and they've been on their way back to, I guess, the consortium, back to the planet of New Triton. They come into this in this book. It is, in some ways dystopian because the consortium is like this overarching um, tyrant, I guess, who controls everything, and they're worried like when you get back to the consortium, what are they going to do with you? Because you're a recorder who's no longer a recorder. You kind of have no use. Book two is called Aberration because she considered herself an aberration. And the other thing, recorders don't have names. For most of the series, he's just called the Recorder, and other characters give her nicknames. But toward the end of this book, minor spoiler, she chooses a name for herself because again, she's becoming more human, so she decides what her name will be, and that's one of the surprises that you get at the end of the book. Um, so she's just the Recorder or the Aberration or whatever people call her throughout most of the series, and yeah, kind of the looming threat, or one of the looming threats, is what's going to happen to you when we get back to the consortium. Will they let you live? Will they just confine you to I don't know what kind of things of course the consortium would relegate her to, but it's like, where do I fit into this society now that I'm not a recorder anymore? But I will say, but yeah, like that's kind of the looming threat in the background. But and I kind of jumping into that. I was looking forward to. I was excited about that. I was like, what's going to happen when we actually finally get back to the consortium? But I will say that's not the main focus of most of this book, because they're still on the space station in the midst of like with other other plot lines going on. For the most part, like the consortium is kind of a looming background threat. There's a character called the Eldest who is like the leader of the consortium, but she doesn't actually appear till near the end of this book either, when they arrive back on the planet. So the question of what's going to happen to the Recorder is kind of this big overarching question, but it's not resolved to the end. In the meantime, there are some other plots going on. There was a bioweapon, like some rebels against the consortium, who are like terrorists, I guess, released a bioweapon. So there's a virus that's making people sick, including our Recorder, and she's trying to save their lives. And then there's other people who other recorders who are damaged too. Like she has some friends, and they've chosen new names, and she tries to create like new identities for them, and like change the records, so that her friends will not be hurt, or so that basically the consortium won't um, kill them, or disregard them or whatever. So she tries to protect the others. That's part of why it's called Guardian. And so it's cool to see these subplots coming together. I will say, I went into it mostly caring about the fate of this one character, the Recorder, and I forgot how much subplots there were with other characters going on. Since this is a new series and relatively unknown, I'm trying to make it more known, but it's not like, you know, like it's not like everyone in the country has read it yet. Um, I don't think it's a Wikipedia summary, so that's the one downside. I read the books like a year apart each, and I didn't remember everything that happened, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of other subplots I have to resolve first, but and there's also a large cast of characters. I'll just tell you that. It's at times it was hard to keep track of all the names because there's a large cast of characters, and I didn't remember who everyone was. I remember the major ones who are the recorder's friends. There's a lot going on in the midst of the book, but by the end, she does come back, or come back to the planet, I guess, where the consortium is, and meet the Eldest and kind of see what her fate will be. Um, I won't tell you too many spoilers, but I will tell you I think it was a satisfying ending, and you know, in a typical in some of like the typical dystopias, you might have like them challenging like Hunger Games or whatever. They take down the government and establish a new government. That doesn't happen here. The consortium isn't defeated overall. I think I mean it's kind of a more nuanced thing. It's like the consortium sure has some problems, but it's not maybe it's not completely evil, and it's not the main antagonist of this book even, I'd say, because kind of the terrorists who are also against the consortium were kind of the major antagonists. So it's kind of dealing with two extreme sides, and our Recorder is caught in the middle somehow. And the ending, I think, is satisfying. It doesn't affect like the whole galaxy. Like it's not like a tearing down society and starting a new one, but it is a satisfying conclusion for our main cast of characters, I think. So I encourage you to read it. If any of that sounds good to you, it sounds like a story you'd be interested in, go check it out if you're a sci-fi fan or whatever, because it is an up and coming author. Like, we're all trying to support each other as indie authors. But if you're a sci-fi fan and you like anything I just said, or if you're just interested in a cool character study, go check it out. Guardian by Cathy McCrumb. The first book is Recorder, then Aberration, then Guardian. So check out all three in order, because that's important for a series. So really good book. I've enjoyed the series a lot. my takeaway for I guess this book and or the whole series, I try to give a writing takeaway. I'd say just humanize your characters, and even like in a sci-fi or fantasy setting, make sure your characters are human. I kind of realized at some point ago, I said this before, but a lot of the stories we like combine um, extraordinary circumstances with ordinary characters. Okay, extraordinary circumstances like space, space, human computers, bioweapons, that kind of thing. Big high stakes circumstances with ordinary human characters. So characters who are still realistic and believable and human despite their big circumstances. And I think this does a great job of blending those two because again, she has to get like the author gets into the recorder's head and tells you, how this kind of character would feel in these circumstances, um, and then you get really attached to the character. So no matter how big your circumstances are, no matter how if your characters are dealing with universe-ending conflict or whatever like that, or multiverse galactic stakes, that kind of thing, you need humanized characters, human, believable, likable, interesting characters for your reader to attach to, and then they're really invested in what happens to the story. So that's my advice. Well, in general, but from this series especially. So again, go check out Guardian or Recorder or Aberration from Cathy McCrumb. And thanks for listening. And keep writing and doing your thing. Bye. Have a great weekend.